This episode of the Good Living Now podcast is sponsored by our friends at Kuvings. Now, I've had almost every brand of juicer on the market since I started my healing journey in 2015. But the Kuvings Auto 10 has been a complete game changer. It's easy to use and easy to clean. Plus, I'm able to make smoothies as well as sorbets and plant-based milk. So use my code JUICEGUY and save 10%. All right, you know what to do. Get your juice on.
Welcome to the Good Living Now podcast, where we talk to real people about real change leading to real health. I'm your host, Harold Leffall, and today we're having a very important conversation because 20 million people worldwide will be diagnosed with cancer this year. That's right, this year alone. And my guest today is a 3-time cancer survivor who helps people live beyond cancer. Her name is Heather Hall. Welcome to the show, Heather Hall. Hey, Heather.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic today. It's always a good day when you wake up and take a breath.
Come on now. That's a good day. Heather, you're a 3-time cancer survivor.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I don't even know where to start from there. So 3 times.
It's a lot.
So when were you first diagnosed with cancer, and what type of cancer was it?
My first diagnosis when I was 21. I was 3 months shy of graduating from college, and I'd had a knee pain off and on for a year or two in my knee. And of course, being 21, I was in college. I had sorority things to go, and my mom kept making doctor's appointments. And I was like, so sorry, got a sorority party, can't come home, all that. So I rode horses, I rode hunter jumpers, and I also ran like almost every day. I finally went to a walk-in clinic, and after doing an x-ray, they discovered that I had osteosarcoma, which is a form of bone cancer. So that I immediately, I was home. I think I was home within 24 hours. Within 2 weeks, I'd had a biopsy and started chemo. So 13 months of chemo at 21. And I think in some ways, it was difficult, of course, being diagnosed at that. But I also had this very optimistic, I never thought like, if I make it, it was always when I make it, I've got this to take care of. I was more annoyed that I had to postpone, getting a job because like I said, I graduated in between chemo treatments on crutches, wearing a wig, but I wanted that diploma.
Wow.
Yeah. And so it was super aggressive. I basically had to do 3 months of chemo, and that would determine, they call it like a tumor kill rate, but that was going to determine if I was able to keep my leg. So thankfully I did. And I had my femur and knee replaced with titanium, which was intense. I had to learn how to walk again. I had to do all sorts of things. And then I had to go back for chemo just to make sure that they got everything. So it was a journey.
Wow. And so over 3 months, they gave you 13 rounds of chemo?
No, I did 13 months of chemo altogether. So I did 3 months, and then I had my surgery, and I had a recovery period, and then I went back and did more chemo just to kind of, and they explained it like, I went through pediatrics at 21, which was fantastic because they explained things very easily, so it was like, I want to make sure we've got this rogue, soldier, that wants to run away and cause all sorts of problems. So the chemo is going to run in there and make sure that they search him out and find it and make sure that it doesn't come back.
Right. And so that was 21. That was your first bout. And so you're living your life, and then you have a second bout of cancer?
Yes. About 5 or 6 years later, I had a mole. I'm, redhead with lots of freckles and all of that. And I thought one looked a little odd. And so I went to my dermatologist and pointed it out. And, at the time, he said it looked fine. No worries. So I left, and about a month later, I went back and said, no, I don't like this one, which was like my first lesson in self-advocacy because he did remove it, and it came back melanoma in situ, which means that thankfully it was contained inside the mole. But again, I caught it, thank God I caught it early enough. So I had another surgery, and then life went on. and
Mm-hmm.
everything was wonderful. And then 5 years ago, when I was in my early 40s, I went in for an annual mammogram. And so, a little plug, please, ladies, make sure you get your mammogram because the tech actually found a shadow, what they thought was a shadow on the mammogram. So, they redid the imaging and it turned out to be early stage one or breast cancer.
Mm. And
Yeah.
what kind of treatment did you get for that?
So for that one, I chose to do, and I say chose, I had a lumpectomy, and then I knew I was going to have to do radiation. I did 16 rounds of radiation, but they when they ran the pathology, they do an oncotype score for breast
Mm-hmm.
cancer, and kind of helps determine if chemo will be a benefit or not, which is fascinating to me that they have enough research now. So sometimes you don't need chemo,
Mm-hmm.
but I was on borderline. And I decided, so I made the choice after talking to several doctors and my mom to do 4 rounds of chemo because it was going to significantly lower my reoccurrence risk, long-term reoccurrence risk. So I did 4 rounds of chemo, so all together. And then I also did estrogen suppression, which put me into early menopause and a lot of
Mm.
things that, quite honestly, I had no idea that women went through when they went through breast cancer. It's just a really
Mm.
challenging cancer to go through. But that was 5 years ago, and I'm thankfully incredibly healthy now.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome that you're
Yeah.
healthy now after all of that you've gone through.
Hmm.
Now, Heather, was there a family history of cancer in your
Not
family?
really. No, I was one of the. When I was diagnosed at 21. Interestingly, my dad was diagnosed a year later with late stage multiple myeloma, which is a cancer of the bone marrow, but they're completely unrelated cancers.
Mm-hmm.
So he went through treatment and was in remission on and off for 6 years before he passed away. And my younger sister did end up with melanoma a couple years ago too. But so I've had genetic testing, absolutely no genetic show up in
Mm.
mine. So which is fascinating to people. Like I even got genetic testing twice, to be honest with you, because
Right,
everyone was so fascinated that there wasn't
right,
any sort of those type of cancers.
right,
So I don't know. I don't know if it's our environment or what it is, and I'm sure we could have
right.
a whole other conversation
Conversation
on,
about
right?
that.
Like why we get it.
Well, Heather, how did cancer change you?
Oh, a lot, especially, being diagnosed there's no, I should always preface it with, there's no good age to be diagnosed with cancer,
Right,
right? Like, because we're all
right.
in different stages of our lives and it impacts us. But, being diagnosed at 21, I mean, you're a young adult, you're on the cusp of adulthood, and there's so many,
Mhm.
I was so excited to start, my career and, I was dating, so maybe kids, maybe this, all of that. And instead, I had to face my mortality. I felt, in some ways I felt like it aged me more than, like emotionally and
Mm.
mentally more than my friends. So at times I catch myself stepping back watching and I was like, oh man, to be that carefree, that knowing that we
Mm.
all have our own other, life
Right,
challenges we're going through, but just to think
right.
about it, like my health has always been at the back of my mind, sometimes at the forefront of my mind,
Mm.
all of those things. And I
Mhm.
also think though, I mean, to look at it I guess from a positive side, which I always try to grasp onto, is that it's made me be a lot more aware of how grateful, like how lucky
Mhm.
we are to wake up every day, right? And I know
Right,
I'm sure you feel the same way,
right.
right? Like with your
Mhm.
experience, that it's just how grateful I am. And I also
Mhm.
have a lot of times it reminds me of like life is short. We have to
Mhm.
do that. And especially, I mean, my dad, as I mentioned, he passed away at 56 years old.
Mhm.
So, I'm in my late 40s now, and I'm like, oh no, I am going to enjoy every minute of every day that I can to do
Right.
that. And in some ways, too,
Mhm.
it kind of reminds me of I've been through enough where whether I'm going on a job interview or a first date or whatever I'm
Mhm.
doing, anytime I get anxious, there's that voice that was like, girl, we have
Right,
been
right.
through.
You got
This
this.
is
You got
nothing,
right, right.
like
You
I
got
started
this.
rock climbing years ago and I hate heights, right? And I
Uh-huh.
was just like, oh my, I got to the top and I was like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And then I was
Uh,
like, suck it up, woman. Like you can get
right.
down there.
You look, you just survived cancer 3 times now. Come on. Come on now.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes, yes.
So, I was mentioning at the beginning of the show that over 20 million people worldwide will be diagnosed with
Yes.
cancer this year. And part of what you do now is you kind of
Mhm.
help people live beyond cancer, but you have discovered some tools that have been helpful for you,
Mhm.
like going through it 3 times. Tell us about some of the things that kind of worked for you when you were going through your cancer experience.
Absolutely. I will say like some of the top thing really was like maintaining my health and,
Mm-hmm.
like being active, being like physically active. Like I'm a big, big fan that moving your body can solve a lot of our problems, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
your mental, your emotional, your physical.
Right.
That was like the number one thing. I was active when I went through breast cancer treatment. I was active every single day of treatment.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I will preface that with that doesn't mean I was like out, hiking 10 miles or I was just, there were
Mm-hmm.
days I admit that I was walk up and down my driveway for 10 minutes. And then I would just be like, okay, I'm tired. I need a break. And then an
Right.
hour later, I'd walk up and down. But I kept my
Mm-hmm.
body going. And anytime I could get out in the woods, I'm a huge nature lover. That's my
Mm-hmm.
happy place. Like I love being out in fresh air. So as soon as I could, I mean, I hugged trees to be frank with you, just because there were times when I was like, it's so good to be outside,
Right. Right.
So that was for me, it was really important. And I also really love meditation and journaling. Those have
Mm-hmm.
been really key for me too, just to really help
Mm-hmm.
my mind. And to me, tackling my mind and keeping my mind focused on gratitude and positivity was so key. And to this day, it is
Yeah.
so key to how I live my life.
Yeah, that is so important, your mindset, because if you're looking at things or you listening to the doctors, you can get
Mhm.
overwhelmed and you can get very feel kind of hopeless. So,
Mhm.
journaling, that was one of the things that worked for me and continues to work for me. And just, and like you said, being active, moving, just getting up and moving.
Mhm.
Um, One of the things that I learned from you that I had never heard of, because I know a lot of folks, are concerned when they're going through chemo, hair
Mhm.
loss. And I learned from you this thing called, is it cold capping? What?
Yes. So cold capping or cold cap therapy, there's a couple different names for it. It's the process of wearing basically a cold cap. It's a
Mm-hmm.
frozen cap. It's at like negative, I want to say like maybe 30 degrees or so. I mean, don't quote me on that, but it's cold. And they put
Mm-hmm.
it on, and the idea is that it freezes the hair follicles to prevent chemo from coming up and destroying your hair follicles. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a really fascinating resource. It's been around for many years, but not a lot of people know about it. But as
Mm-hmm.
technology advances, I did what they call manual caps. So I had
Mm-hmm.
this frozen cap. It kind of looks like a football helmet, and
Mm-hmm.
it sits on your head for the whole time that you're going through chemo for the infusion. And then I kept it on for a little bit afterwards too. They have machines now, which are really cool, that have fitted caps, and it's hooked up to a machine that's constantly processing like frozen, not frozen, but like freezing cold
Uh-huh.
gels and everything to do it. But then the idea is so I had 12 weeks of chemo. I had 4 rounds. In between each of the rounds, there was a lot of maintenance. Like you had, I mean, I didn't wash my hair with warm water. So all these people on this cold plunge kick right now, I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
been there, done that. But you do that, you're just really gentle. So there's a lot of maintenance on how you care for your hair. But the idea is that, sometimes it's successful. I was able to keep 60% of my hair.
Wow.
So for me, I thankfully had a ton of, like, I had a really thick head of hair prior to chemo that
Mm-hmm.
was straight, mind you. It's curly
Mm-hmm.
now, 5 years later, it's still curly. But so I was able to save about 60%. So I've met women who saved 90% of their hair, but I've also met women who've only saved about 10 to 15%. However, the idea also is that it's preserving your hair follicles. So even if you lose hair, it grows
Mm-hmm.
back
Right,
quickly.
quickly.
And some
Yeah.
of them, one of the drugs, for instance, that I went on, which is really popular for breast cancer, is Taxol or
Mm-hmm.
Taxotere. It has 5 to 10% of people who use that drug have permanent hair loss. So in this way,
Mm-hmm.
it was helping also preserve that. And ironically enough, I lost a lot of hair back here. I had hair growing back before my last chemo treatment. It was amazing.
Wow. So it started
Mhm.
growing back while you were still having,
Yeah,
wow.
I know, when all of a sudden I was like, "Oh my gosh, I have hair, like, it's growing back already." So,
Uh-huh.
it was pretty amazing, and for me, it's a personal choice. Not all cancers work. It's more for solid tumor type cancers.
Mm.
Um, but for me, I was bald for 15 months during bone cancer, at 21,
Mm.
22, so the pivotal time of my life. And then when I was diagnosed, a couple years ago, I'm a leader in a company. I just wanted to try it for my own
Mhm.
personal, choice. And it was pretty cool. And now I will say, like, as being, a cancer advocate and really trying to help people, I feel comfortable that I can talk about it, either way now to somebody who
Right,
might need the help.
right, right. Heather, what do you say people who have gone through cancer and the cancer may be gone now, but they still have they almost have PTSD where they think they fear it
Mhm.
coming back. What do you say to people who may have gone through cancer? The cancer is gone now, but they constantly have this fear. Oh my God! In every little thing they're looking at, anytime they have a
Sure.
cold or something, they think, "Oh my God, is this?" What would you say to someone that they have that kind of anxiety?
Well, first I would say that's normal. Like,
Hmm.
I can't, and I don't want to speak for all of the, cancer survivors, but I have to imagine that almost all of us at some point feel that concern, right? Like,
Hmm.
it's that thing that's in the back of your head that no matter what, you can't get rid of it. And
Right, right.
so what I've tried doing for myself is that, I try to consider that I'm not going to worry, I'm going to be aware. And what I mean
Hmm.
by that is that I know that I'm being as proactive as possible. I make sure I follow up with all of my follow ups. I see every doctor that I need to. I stay on top of my health. I feel, and I know a lot of cancer survivors feel this way, that I am so in tune with my body that I know actually when something's up. I can call my doctor and say, I'm not feeling good. And I also have my number one thing is surround yourself with a phenomenal care team. Find those
Mm.
doctors that you gel with, that you can click with, that who listen to you. And so I have really, really great doctors that if I call them and say, I'm just not feeling well, something's up, they're like, okay, you know
They're
your
all
body
that.
best. We are going to, yeah, we're going to find out what's going on with you. And I also am a big, big fan of counseling. To be fine,
Mm.
like whether it's an individual counselor, finding a support group to go through. If you feel that you are really, really having anxiety and just not being able to live your life in ease, then reach
Mhm.
out. Find somebody who can help you. And you don't have to deal with that yourself. PTSD
I
is
used
real.
to.
I
Yeah.
really believe that it is a real thing for those of us who
Mhm.
go through something like this.
Right.
And you don't, I'm a fan of, I don't want cancer to control my life. Like my motto
Mm.
is I can't always control what happens in my life, but I can choose how I react and respond to it.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
So tell us about Heather's Hangout. What's that?
So Heather's Hangout is well, it started out as a blog, and it's actually in the process of being revamped, which I'm super excited about, just because it's growing beyond what I really imagined. I started it, I would say, about 8 or 10 years ago, as an opportunity for me to write. I write. I love writing. I have a journalism degree and I'm in PR and marketing, and so I write. But to me, this was just like it started out, to be frank with you, as like a brain dump where I was like, okay, this is what's happening. But then I started realizing that it was resonating with like particular other cancer survivors or caregivers. And I
Mhm.
realized that my motto is kind of like living beyond cancer, no matter where you are. And for me, that means that even when I was in the middle of treatment, cancer was not going to control my life. Like I was in charge
Mm.
of my life and I was going to choose to find joy and find all of these things. And I also, it's a way for me to give back too. So I do share education, tips on, cancer, living with cancer for caregivers. And again, it's growing over the years because I actually have found that quite a few people who are not cancer survivors follow it and they like the mindset. So the mindset has become a big area for me. So it's just, it's a resource that it's my way of giving back. I feel so blessed and grateful to be here, to be alive, and I'm really passionate about helping others and making the world a better place. So it's a
Oh,
resource that I hope people find very helpful.
I love that. I love that. Heather, t- so talk about folks who may have a friend or family member that's going through cancer and they don't know how to support them. They don't
Mhm.
know what to do, what to say. And sometimes everyone isn't able to handle your diagnosis.
Mhm.
You may have friends or family and you think they're going to be there to support you, but when someone is going through cancer, it's not only scary for the person that has cancer, it's scary for those that love them. What are some ways that people can support their loved one, or friend or family member that may be going through cancer?
Yeah, I love that you brought this up because I think it's such an important topic, both for the person going through it and, like you
Mm,
said, the family and friends. And my advice is, be there. Like, let them know that you're there, show up
mm,
for them, whether it's, and not always cancer related, right? Like, it's great to offer to say, like, I had people, friends and family saying, do you want me to take you to your treatment? Do you want me to drive you somewhere? I thankfully felt okay that I didn't
mm,
need drivers, but my mom and sisters were with me at every treatment, all of that. And and I had people asking me, well, can I bring dinner over? So that's the thing, offer, like,
mhm,
do you need help? I had somebody arrange to have, I had a cleaning company come in, thanks to a friend of mine when I went through treatment, which was a
mhm.
treat for me because I was like,
Yeah.
oh, okay,
Mhm, mhm,
So little things like that. If somebody has a child, maybe help with care, child care, just
mhm,
to be there. But I also really appreciate the people who would call me and say, how are you doing? And I'd say, I'm good.
mhm,
And my friend would say, I had a couple friends who said, cancer talk or no cancer talk? And I'm like, no cancer
mm,
talk. And they're like, okay,
mm.
did you watch the latest episode of Survivor? Like, let's talk about that. Or,
Yeah, I
so it
like
was
that.
kind of nice,
Yeah.
so that there were just times that I didn't want to talk about cancer. I don't
Right.
want it, to be part of that. And so that was nice to be able to, but I also recognize that I could share that too. I could say to somebody, I'm feeling okay. Let's not, I just don't feel like talking about it today. And they're like, okay, no problem, no problem. But I knew that person was here for me, right? So that was kind of
Right.
nice to do. And
Right.
then I will say too, because you touched on, like, sometimes it is difficult for people and some people don't know what to do. So they go MIA.
Mhm.
Or when I went through treatment, I had a friend who was also a cancer survivor who kind of disappeared. And I was like, what is happening here? Like,
Right.
rude, like, and it hurt my
Right.
feelings.
Right.
And
Right.
we have a good enough relationship that I finally said, what's going on? Like, I kind of thought, not that I thought you'd be here like every day, but I thought,
Mhm.
and he admitted, he's like, it's just really hard for me right now. And and he goes, and I apologize. And I said, no, I don't want you to apologize. And I said,
Right.
that's all you needed to say. Hey, I'm just
Mhm.
going through some stuff. And, like, I'll check in. And I was like,
Mhm.
that's cool. I don't want to hear from you. And so, we text back and forth, but I appreciated that, like, okay, that's it. And it made me realize, like, that's fine. Like, just let me
Mhm.
know. Or there's other ways. Like, I had one friend every single week. I don't know how she timed it with the post office, but
Mhm.
every week, the day before treatment, I had a card and a pair of super fun socks show up in my mail.
Mm.
And then I wore to chemo, right? Like, it was just like, this is like, I'm Shira or whatever. And it got to a point where the nurse would be like, what socks do we have on today? So, just little things like that.
Right.
I do also have on my blog like a care package or ideas of, because people are always asking me, what's something I can give to my friend about, who's going through treatment. So I've tried to kind of
Right.
put together a list of things to do. But and I will say, like, as a cancer survivor, if you're someone like me who I tend to be independent, I tend to think I can do everything myself.
Mhm.
Um, I had a really good counselor say to me, look at it like it's a gift to help other people, right? Like,
Mm.
their way of, they want to help you, but you're helping them by letting them help you,
Right.
if you can make
Exactly.
sense of that.
Yeah, yeah,
But it
yeah.
kind of made me realize, I'm like, oh, that's such a great way to look at it, right? Like, I
Mhm.
get such joy out of helping other people. Well, maybe I need to let them get some joy too,
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, Heather, how can people connect with you, find the resources that you have? How can they find you on social media? You have a website?
I do. Yeah, they're happy to find me at heathershangout.com. So make it very easy for that. I'd love to have people, like, check in there and message me and all of that. And I'm on social media, most active on Instagram, which is at Heather's Hangout. So
Mm.
again, always welcoming, trying to share things, kind of making just life fun, right? Because at the end of the
Yeah.
day, like, I always tell people, like, the greatest thing that you could do for yourself is every night before you go to bed, think of 3 things that happen good in the day.
Mm.
No, because we
Mm.
can always find good. I mean, at the minimum, we woke
Right.
up today.
Right. We got up today. That's it.
Yes.
That's it. Wow. Well, thank you, Heather, so much for
Thank
sharing your
you.
journey and sharing your light with us.
Thank
And
you so much.
And folks, if you have family or friends who are going through cancer, definitely go to Heather's Hangout for resources. And yeah, there's hope. There's hope. If we
Absolutely.
woke up
Every
this
day.
morning, there's hope. Well,
Yep.
thank you so much, Heather. I appreciate you.
Thank you.